Most leadership mistakes don't happen because the leaders choose the wrong thing. They happen because leaders adjust too soon, too late, or for the wrong reason. We talk a lot about leadership being a balancing act, balancing urgency and vision, structure and freedom, thinking and acting. But I don't think balance is the right metaphor. Leadership isn't about balance, it's about calibration. In today's episode, I'll tell you what that means and how it applies to 3 specific areas in your leadership, and then give you 2 simple questions you can ask yourself to see if it's time for you to recalibrate. Welcome back to the Modern Leadership Solutions podcast, where we help you lead with clarity, intentionality, and confidence. Today, I want to reframe how we think about leadership decisions, especially in seasons of change, pressure, or growth. Because the goal isn't to find some perfect, stable equilibrium. The goal is to know when to adjust and when to hold steady. In leadership, we talk a lot about balance, but balance often implies something static. Like once you find it, you just stay there. But leadership doesn't work that way. Everything around you is moving. Your team, your organization, the environment, the demands on your time. So leadership requires ongoing adjustment. That's calibration. Calibration assumes you're paying attention, you're getting feedback, and you're making intentional, measured adjustments. And that requires discipline. In fact, 2 disciplines matter more than most realize. The first is discernment. Discernment is knowing what needs attention. It's the ability to separate the signals from the noise, to recognize the difference between discomfort and dysfunction. Discomfort is part of growth, part of running a business and leading a team. Dysfunction is not. It's unhealthy and often destructive. You need to be able to discern between the 2. And the second core discipline is patience. Patience is knowing when not to act. It's the discipline of letting something play out long enough to actually learn from it. And here's the key insight. Discernment without patience leads to overreactions. Patience without discernment leads to drift. Effective leaders need both. So let's talk about 3 zones to watch for potential recalibration. Now, the first place leaders need to recalibrate regularly is their attention. There's a constant tension in a leader's life between the frontline fires, the emails, the problems, decisions, and the long-term vision, the direction, the culture, the future capability. Most leaders don't fail because they ignore vision. They fail because the urgent crowds out the important. The discernment question here is simple. Where does my attention create the most leverage right now? Not where I'm most comfortable, not where I feel I'm most needed, but where does my attention actually move the organization forward? Now, here's where patience comes in. Sometimes vision work feels slow. It's really a long-term focus, so there aren't any immediate results. So leaders shift to the operational side. It feels productive, but it's actually avoidance of the longer-term picture. You need both. The discipline is resisting the urge to swing wildly between those 2. Small adjustments in attention over time create clarity without chaos. Now, the second recalibration zone is in structure. Every leader creates structure, that is, rules, systems, labels, and processes. And structure is good. It creates clarity and consistency until it doesn't. And I've experienced this personally. At one point, I had named a series of videos called Windshield Thoughts. It gave me structure and it worked until it didn't. Eventually, that same label that provided that structure and helped me focus started limiting what I felt free to create. That's what happens when structure outlives its purpose. The discernment question here is this structure still serving growth or just familiarity? And the patience discipline is critical. Some leaders abandon structure too early. Others cling to it too long. You don't recalibrate structure just because you're bored. You recalibrate when it no longer produces clarity, consistency, or progress. Now, the third zone is decision speed. There's a tension between thoughtful reflection and timely action. Some leaders overthink and will call it wisdom. This is where I often land. Others act quickly and call it decisiveness. And I've been on both sides, especially in recent decisions around a YouTube project I was working on. I came up with some great ideas and decided to act right away. Moving fast felt productive, but it created rework I could have avoided with more patience. The problem was I didn't spend enough time thinking through the details and the impact. This wasn't an urgent decision that had to be made right away. And if I had waited at least overnight, I would have been able to avoid a lot of backtracking. I've found that for most of the decisions I make, an overnight hold is a must, and a week is more than enough. So the discernment question is, what needs more data, and what simply needs a decision and action? The patience discipline asks, am I waiting because I lack clarity or because I'm uncomfortable committing? Speed matters, but so does timing. Now, here's the part that matters. Calibration does not mean constant change. Some leaders fail not because they ignore drift, they fail because they never let anything settle. Do not recalibrate when you haven't closed a full feedback loop, or discomfort is being mistaken for failure, or the change would confuse the people that you lead. The hard truth is your team needs fewer changes than you do. Stability builds trust. Sometimes holding steady is not avoidance, it's actually leadership. So, how do you apply these ideas? Here are the two questions I said I'd give you. Before adjusting your focus, your structure, your strategy, pause and ask, what signal is telling me to recalibrate? And what would happen if I held steady for 30 more days? You don't need massive reinvention. You need small, intentional adjustments made at the right time. So, leadership isn't about finding perfect balance. It's about discernment, knowing what needs attention, and patience, knowing when to leave it alone. That's calibration. When you practice it well, you lead with clarity instead of chaos, and intention instead of reaction. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. If this helps, please hit the like and subscribe button so you're notified on future episodes. And let me know in the comments if there are topics you'd like to see covered. Leadership growth is important. Remember, effective leadership doesn't happen by accident, it's intentional.